As for the definition, committing an act, blah, 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 our top priority should always be efficiency and effectiveness in arresting people who are planning terrorist activities. The honourable member will have 8 minutes and 30 seconds for questions and comments after question period when we resume debate.
Déclaration de député. The honourable member for Nanaimo Ladysmith.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to thank the voters of Nanaimo Ladysmith for putting their faith in me. It's an honor to be here in this place, and I pledge to work hard and do my best to represent my constituents. I would also like to thank my campaign staff and volunteers for working so hard to help me get elected, and my family for their support, inspiration, and guidance. We face a lot of challenges in Nanaimo Ladysmith, but we also have a lot of opportunities to create the kind of community and world that we want our children and grandchildren to inherit. As a society, we can do better to ensure that our most vulnerable citizens are better cared for. We have a caring community, but we need is more government support. Climate change represents a major security and economic threat. People in Nanaimo Ladysmith are stepping up to do what they can, but we need the government to show the political courage for stronger greenhouse gas targets and drive the transition to a clean, green energy economy. Together, we can do this.
L'honorable député de...
The honourable member for La Prairie. Madam Speaker, today I'm pleased to speak about an organization that works to improve the lives of those aged 50 and over. It's called Café Liberté 50. It's in Saint-Philippe, and it's celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. It was founded in 2009 by Maurice Bisson and Gilles Tardif, and the café started out with just 20 members. Its mission is to entertain seniors with various activities and outings throughout the year. Now, 10 years later, the organization has clearly expanded significantly from its humble beginnings, and it now includes over 200 members. Madam Speaker, I'm happy to support organizations like Café Liberté 50. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to promote our New Horizons program, which also helps seniors have more fulfilling lives. I encourage everyone over the age of 50 who wants to feel less isolated to sign up for this program right away. Let's be proud of our seniors, and congratulations to Café Liberté 50 on its 10th anniversary. Thank you.
The honourable member for Bow River.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Brooks Bandits fans know their team is top in the Alberta Junior Hockey League. The Bandits won the national championship in 2013, made it to the championship in 2015 and 2017. They won 4 AJL titles in the recent years. This year we are hosting the national champions, and fan expectations were high. Unlike this Prime Minister, the Bandits delivered. The Bandits shattered multiple records this season, 57-3, an unprecedented 30-0 at home, 33-game winning streak, a new record for points earned in the season, new record for wins overall. They scored the most goals in this league in decades. They lived up to their promise by winning their 5th AJHL title in 8 years. And to cap it off, they won the National Junior Championship hosted in the hometown of Brooks. The hardest championship to win in sports, to win with 133 teams competing. The Brooks Bandits fans expected nothing less. Unlike this Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, the Brooks Bandits as good as advertised.
The honourable member for Miramichi Grand Lake.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, yesterday, the 75th anniversary of D-Day, the largest seaborne invasion in history. On that day, the men of the North Shore Regiment landed on the beaches of Normandy, and many of them did not return home to New Brunswick. One such soldier was Major Archie McNaughton, a farmer from Black River Bridge. Archie enlisted during the First World War and did not hesitate to do so again in World War II. His story has inspired a new Heritage Minute, a short film that honors the wartime contribution by New Brunswick's storied North Shore Regiment. C'est justement...
And it was this story, Madam Speaker, that inspired over 200 students and teachers from my riding, accompanied by Lieutenant Colonel Dufour from the North Shore Regiment, to travel to France for the D-Day commemorations. Like everyone from Miramichi Grand Lake, I'm so grateful to these brave young men who 75 years ago made the ultimate sacrifice so that we could live in freedom and prosperity. We will remember them. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Courtenay Albany.
Madam Speaker, last week a newborn orca was spotted swimming near Tofino by my good friends John Ford and Jennifer Stephen. I can't think of a better way to observe World Oceans Day than to congratulate the entire pod and celebrate this sign of hope and renewal for our oceans. At the same time, the survival rate of newborn orcas is only about 50% during their first year of life. May we resolve today on World Oceans Day, on all sides of this House, to take all actions necessary to ensure a healthy environment for this baby orca. Let's get the plastics out of its waters. Let's protect and preserve the interdependent species on which these whales depend. A major and complex undertaking, to be sure, but nothing less will give real meaning to the World Oceans Day, and nothing less will allow the celebration of more baby orcas to come.
The honourable member for Nepean.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to recognize Rabbi Howard Finkelstein, who was with Beit Tikva Synagogue in Nepean for the last 28 years. I wish Rabbi Howard and his wife Rivka all the very best in their retirement. Also wish to recognize Ted Bransfield, member of Bell's Corners Legion. Ted was recently awarded Legionnaire of the Year. Ted has sat down with 387 veterans to help with their benefits and claims. He is also actively involved with Pearly Redo and Redo Veterans Healthcare Center. Also wish to recognize 4 Nepean churches that participated in this year's Big Give: Bible Way Ministries, Woodvale Pentecostal Church, Good Shepherd Church, and the Metropolitan Bible Church. This annual event supports those who are less fortunate by giving away all donated items free of cost. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Madam Speaker, this past weekend, my family and I had the pleasure of attending the 10th annual Calgary Ukrainian Festival in my riding of Calgary-Midnapore. As both my husband and my mother come from Ukrainian backgrounds, it is something that we look forward to every year. The 2-day annual festival provides an opportunity to showcase not only Ukrainian arts, cuisine, entertainment, and culture, but genuine, warm, and energetic Ukrainian hospitality. As Albertans, we are aware of how much Ukrainians have added to our province and to our country. They are hard-working, loyal, and kind people. As Conservatives, we have always supported Ukraine. Our previous Conservative government was one of the first voices on the international stage to offer explicit support for the Ukrainian people in their struggle to restore democracy, freedom, and the rule of law. And our leader has reaffirmed that commitment will only grow stronger under our next Conservative government. I want to thank all of the organizers, including Chris Licia and Mike, for making my family and I feel so welcome last weekend, and congratulate them on a decade of honoring Ukrainian culture.
The honourable member for Spadina-Fort York.
Madam Speaker, as the Member of Parliament for Spadina-Fort York, I'm proud this term to work to secure funding to build a more affordable, a more beautiful, a more creative city to live, work, and play in. It begins with housing, $1.3 billion to repair and build new public housing, including new funding for an 80-unit facility on the waterfront in my riding. On transit, $4.9 billion for the TTC has been delivered, and that's supplied a new streetcar line between Cherry Street and Dufferin in the riding, as well as supporting the King Street pilot project and, of course, extending Toronto's bike share program. Our riding's natural beauty is benefiting from close to $1 billion invested in naturalizing the Don River, delivering new parks and flood-protecting parts of my riding, and most of all of downtown Toronto. As MP, I've also secured millions of dollars in new funding for Harbourfront Centre, OCAD University, George Brown College, and so many more, including Artscape. But the best part of being a Spadina-Fort York MP is the progress we've made on poverty. There's almost 50% fewer single mums living in poverty in Toronto than when we first got elected. That's real change. Better is possible.
The honourable member for Eglinton Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It gives me great pleasure and pride to rise to commemorate the first ever Filipino Heritage Month in Canada in this month of June. This is a long overdue recognition for a community, indeed the fastest growing community in Canada now for several years. Given their contributions when it comes to music, to food, to entrepreneurialism and culture, I can think of great festivals like the Taste of Manila, PIDC, Mabuhay Festival, Proudly Pinoy, Pinoy Radio, other businesses like like FV Foods, Kabalan, Cuisine Lounge, all of added so richly to the social fabric of Canada. I would be remiss, Madam Speaker, if I also didn't note the loss of a great leader in the Filipino community, Consul General Prospero, who I had the honor of serving with in Toronto. Not only did she serve the Kababayan, but she was a great friend to Canada, and through you, Madam Speaker, and through the ambassador to Canada from the Philippines, we express our condolences. We want to celebrate the Filipino culture. Mabuhay!
The honourable member for Portage-Lisgar.
I rise today to honor the life and passion of Kim Samard, who passed away after a courageous and faith-filled battle with cancer. Kim and I met some 20 years ago attending the same church with kids the same age. But what really drew Kim and I together was our sole political goal of defeating Liberals. Kim loved politics, and we knocked on many doors, made many phone calls, and raised money in the riding of St. Boniface with the purpose of electing Conservatives. But Kim was passionate about much more than just politics. She loved God, she adored her family, including her church family at Springs, but she especially loved her husband, Pat, and their kids, Josh, Jordana, and Jamie. Kim always had the most beautiful smile on her face, laughter in her voice, and light in her eyes, even through some of her most difficult physical battles. That light and that smile will be very much missed. I love you, Kim, and I'm going to be thinking of you during the election campaign in October, because if there is any politicking going on in heaven, I know you'll be leading the Conservative charge and cheering us on all the way.
The honourable member for Hastings, Lennox, Addington.
Madam Speaker, June is National Indigenous History Month. I would like to invite all Canadians, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous alike, to join me in celebrating the culture, heritage, and contributions of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis in Canada. The celebration of National Indigenous History Month marks a time of honor, reflect on, and to recognize the rich heritage and cultural diversity of Indigenous peoples. It also aims to foster respect, understanding, and appreciation across the country. On June 21st, in honor of National Indigenous Peoples Day, events will take place from coast to coast to coast. I encourage everyone to share in the celebration by participating in activities planned in their local area. And finally, I would like to invite everyone to participate in the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte powwow on August 10th and 11th. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Bravo.
The Honourable Member for Hull-Aylmer. Madam Speaker, this year, one of the most important organizations in my riding, the Club Optimiste de Hull, is celebrating its 50th anniversary. Many things were created 50 years ago. The Internet, ATMs, the Beatles' album Abbey Road, and even a certain member of Parliament for Hull-Aylmer. 50 years deserves a celebration. So I'd like to thank this diverse team for their work in helping develop young people's potential in Hull. The organization helps young people from Hull by providing scholarships, by providing mentoring, and physical and social development opportunities. To the Club Optimiste de Hull, congratulations on your 50 years of service. Long live the Club d'Optimistes.
The honour member for Calgary-Signal Hill.
Madam Speaker, I recently prepared and distributed a report card to constituents on my 4 years as a Member of Parliament. And while I was preparing that report card, I thought, what would the Prime Minister's report card look like? Well, let me tell you, it was 4 years of failure, Madam Speaker, because we have 4 deficit budgets.
Order. I'll have the member restart. I would just ask members to please hold on to their applause or excitement until after the member has finished. The honourable member for Calgary-Signal Hill.
Madam Speaker, I'll start again. As I said, I spent some time preparing a report card for constituents on my 4 years as Member of Parliament. And while I was doing that, I was thinking about what the Prime Minister's report card would look like. Well, let's look at the Prime Minister's past 4 years. We've had 4 years of massive budget deficits when it was promised that we'd have a balanced budget in 2019. We had 4 slaps on the wrist by the Ethics Committee. No, sorry, 3 slaps on the wrist. One was the Finance Minister because he forgot about his French villa. We had 4 women kicked out of the Liberal caucus. No, it was 3 women kicked out of the Liberal caucus because they stood up to this Prime Minister. And then we had the meeting with the Prime Minister of Japan, or was it the Prime Minister of China? Madam Speaker, F on this report card for failure. This Prime Minister is not as advertised.
The honourable member for Brampton West.
Madam Speaker, by working together, our government, our international and local partners have made huge strides in improving the health, nutrition and rights of the most poorest and most vulnerable around the world. Earlier this week, our government announced that we will invest $1.4 billion a year for the health and rights of women, adolescents and children, $700 million of which will go specifically towards sexual and reproductive health rights. It reflects Canada's commitment to working hard to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, and we believe firmly that only way to achieve this is by advancing gender equality. We need to tear down many social, cultural, and structural barriers that hold women and girls back by limiting their choices and possibilities. Together, we will make sure that women and girls have the resources, the opportunities, and the tools that they need to be empowered and to succeed. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Port Moody Coquitlam.
Madam Speaker, it's been an honor to serve. My political career began long before I was first elected. In 1995, I swam the 1,400-kilometer length of the Fraser River to draw attention to the issues impacting the health of the watershed. That swim changed my life and started me on a path that led me here. In 2002, I was elected to Coquitlam City Council. In 2009, thanks to NDP leader Jack Layton, I was elected Member of Parliament. Now I'm returning to the work that brought me here in the first place. The Fraser Watershed Initiative is a multi-year campaign to heal and protect the entire watershed, 1/4 of British Columbia, bringing together First Nations, local governments, NGOs, and others. Madam Speaker, while I'm excited about getting back to work on the Fraser, I can't leave this place without saying thanks to my NDP colleagues, friends, staff, volunteers, family, and especially my wife, Linda. Thank you to MPs from all parties who I've worked with over the years, the guards, clerks, and all the staff on the Hill. And thank you to the people of Port Moody, Coquitlam, Anmore, and Belcarra. It has truly been an honor to serve.
Wow. The honourable member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Madam, I would like to reintroduce you to the Liberal leader of 2015. He promised modest deficits, GST removal from social housing, to respect Parliament, to empower committees free from government interference, an open and transparent government, to take climate change seriously, a non-partisan Senate, to end first past the post, and to top it off, he promised sunny ways. On these promises and so much more, he failed to deliver. Madam Speaker, the Liberal leader stepped into the office of the Prime Minister in 2015 with voters being sold a bill of goods. But Canadians will not be fooled twice. He does not understand his failed policies and the negative impact that they have on Canadian families. Madam Speaker, Canadians know that this Prime Minister is not as advertised.
The honourable member for Cape Breton, Cancel.
Madam Speaker, there are 338 members of Parliament in this chamber. That's 338 families that are directly affected by how this place operates. I've been blessed. I've had the good fortune to marry a smart, hardworking, beautiful and caring, independent woman in my wife, Lynn. Her three sons, Mitch, Scott, and Brad, have grown into wonderful young men we are both very proud of. We received tremendous support from my parents, from Lynn's folks, our sisters and brothers and close friends. But make no mistake, Lynn would, for the most part, raise the boys as a single mom. As I wrap up 19 years in this place, I offer a challenge to members from all parties who will return. On this specific issue, peel back the silly pettiness and gamesmanship. Look beyond the scoring of any cheap political gain and make this place work for our families. I'm certain even first-term members here can see the inefficiencies in this place and the squandering of time and resources. As incredible an honor as it is to serve in this place, each and every member's first priority has to be with their family, so let's make this place work for our families.
The honourable member for, oral questions, questions orales, the honourable member for Carleton.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Well, it's only been a short time since Premier Kenney, a newly elected Conservative Premier, has taken office, and already he's keeping his promises. The elimination of the carbon tax has led to among the lowest gas prices in all of Canada. Meanwhile, in neighboring British Columbia, which has the carbon tax model the Prime Minister seeks to replicate, had prices that reach almost $1.80 a litre, something the Prime Minister says is exactly what we want. So, clear question and in search of a clear answer. What will be the full and final increase in gas prices when this government's carbon tax is increased?
Good question. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Madam Speaker, the honourable member is once again misleading Canadians about the impact of our plan to put a price on pollution. I would invite him to take a look at today's job reports, which noted that there was 27,000 additional jobs added to the Canadian economy, bringing unemployment to the lowest level that we have ever seen in Canada. Madam Speaker, I know that the province of Saskatchewan has actually commissioned a report that they have buried when they realize that our plan to price pollution will not have a drag on the economy. In the first 2 months or any indication, we know that we can bring our emissions down, create jobs at the same time, and make life more affordable for families.
The honourable member for Carleton.
No, they don't want to answer the question because they don't want Canadians to know how expensive life will become when this carbon tax is fully and finally implemented. In fact, the total price is not even known for the year 2023, only 4 years away. We know already, though, that Alberta has seen its gas prices drop to among the lowest in the entire country, and the places with higher carbon taxes are paying more at the pump. The average Canadian family is $200 away from insolvency. They can't afford to pay $2 a litre for gas. But is that how high gas prices are going when this Liberal plan is finally implemented?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Once again, if you actually look at the facts, you can see that our plan is taking effect and it's making life more affordable for families. When I look at the Parliamentary Budget Office report, he confirmed that 8 out of 10 families in the member's own province are going to be better off as a result of our plan. I'd also direct him to recent reports that show that Doug Ford's plan in Ontario to fight climate change is less effective and twice as expensive for Canadian households. We found a way to bring emissions down, have incredible job growth like we witnessed in the province of British Columbia just last month, and make life more affordable for his constituents.
Only a Liberal would think life becomes more affordable when gas prices go up. In fact, that's what the Prime Minister said. Asked about $1.70 a litre gas prices in the province of British Columbia, he said, "This is exactly what we want." But Canadians without trust funds know that high gas prices hurt their bottom line. That's why families are on average $200 away from insolvency today. Why won't they answer the question? It's a simple and factual one. What will be the full and final increase in the price of gas when this Liberal carbon tax is completely implemented?
Exactly. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
The honourable member knows that our price is going to $50 a tonne by 2022. It's been on our website. I've told him that a number of times. The reason life is being made more affordable as a result of our plan is because we introduced the Climate Action Incentive, which puts $307 in the average family of 4 in that community. I'd be curious if he's spoken to his leader, who potentially chose to file his taxes in Saskatchewan, where he could get a bigger bump from the Climate Action Incentive. Madam Speaker, the honourable member is convinced that misleading Canadians is the right strategy. I find honesty works. We can bring our emissions down and make life more affordable.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. How can this government be happy to impoverish Canadian taxpayers? Honest workers have on average $800 less in their pockets now, and the Liberals are rejoicing. Millions of Canadians do not earn enough to pay their bills and debts. Worse still, Madam Speaker, this government has jeopardized the future of our children and grandchildren by leaving an $8 billion deficit. Will the Liberals stop wasting Canadians' money? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance. Thank you, Madam Speaker. With all the respect for my colleague, and I do have a lot of respect for him, he should know, Madam Speaker, that since we've been in power, an average 4-person family has $2,000 more now in their pockets than under the Harper administration. We didn't help out millionaire families or wealthy Canadians. we have a much more inclusive plan. And in his riding, they voted against a measure that has allowed more than 12,000 families to receive more than $5,700 tax-free. The Honourable Member for Portneuf, Jacques Cartier. I have also a lot of respect for my colleague, but what hypocrisy. They cut tax credits for young people who do sports and cultural activities. They give money with one hand and take it back with another, the Liberals. Canadian families are an average of $800 worse off now. It is irresponsible and dishonest to Canadian families. When will the Liberals stop wasting Canadians' hard-earned money? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, what's dishonest is that they cited a study from the Fraser Institute, which has been denounced by many. Well, the Canada Child Benefit helps many children in his riding, and it's making a major difference. It's insulting to say that about the CCB. Well, the tax credit for transit, what was this tax credit? We're talking about $13 a month when you fill up. That's out the forms. That's nothing compared to the CCB. The Honourable Member for Belley-Chambly. KPMG's clients accused of tax evasion are getting off again with a free pass. Once again, the Liberals are granting them tax amnesty. The privileged are well served by this government. And if they get into trouble, a friendly arrangement can always be found. Madam Speaker, what I want to know is whether the Liberals will stop offering preferential treatment and finally applying the same tax rules to everyone. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Revenue.
Our government is firmly committed to fighting tax evaders. Out-of-court settlements are reached through a fully independent process within the Canada Revenue Agency in collaboration with the Department of Justice. And this is to ensure the integrity of our tax system. And while we understand that settlements can be used appropriately in certain circumstances, the ministers directed the CRA to review its processes to allow for greater transparency on the reasons why a settlement is reached. Tax fairness is a fundamental pillar of our system. Canadians have seen improvements through the recent tax filing season, helping to ensure Canadians get the benefits and credits that they are entitled to. We are delivering.
The Honourable Member for North Island, Powell River.
Well, Madam Speaker, families across this country are just trying to make ends meet with skyrocketing housing costs, out-of-pocket healthcare, childcare, and the very basic of necessities. Instead of getting relief, the Liberal minister again is granting amnesty to KPMG clients accused of avoiding paying their fair share of taxes. When will this end? The government's priority is clearly their wealthy friends and not the everyday hardworking people of this country. So when will this Liberal government be accountable for their actions and take care of the people who work hard for our country?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Revenue.
Madam Speaker, I just want to remind Canadians that our government is firmly committed to supporting Canadians, making sure that their benefits and credits that they are entitled to are coming to them, and that's the improvements that we've been making in the CRA. But I also want to remind the member about the 1.5% reduction in the federal tax rate that's benefiting the majority of Canadians, and the increases to the Canada Child Benefit that we made tax-free, that it helps 9 out of 10 families. The improvements that we've been making for Canadians have benefited. Majority of families are getting $2,000 better off than they were under the previous government. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for North Island, Powell River.
Well, Madam Speaker, we're talking about tax evasion and about the real underlying issue, which is who are they going to care for, the wealthiest or the most vulnerable? And that goes back to Service Canada, who lacks sufficient staff right now, causing applications from seniors to go unprocessed for years. A constituent recently shared with me her experience of applying for OAS and her survivor benefits over 2 years ago. And while she asked for updates many times, 944 days later, nothing has been done. Until Service Canada gets the appropriate resources, seniors of this country will continue to suffer. Can the minister please explain to the seniors of this country why this continues to happen?
The Honourable Minister of Seniors.
Madam Speaker, I'm happy to have the opportunity to speak about the strong work that our government has been doing for seniors. The member is mentioning OAS and GIS. While we restored the age of eligibility of OAS and GIS, we've moved it from 67 to 65. This prevented 100,000 seniors from going into poverty. We increased the GIS for the most vulnerable single seniors. This has a positive impact on 900,000 seniors and lifted 57,000 seniors out of poverty. Other areas, Madam Speaker, $55 billion in a national housing strategy, $6 billion in home care and palliative care, because we know seniors want to age in place. We're going to continue to work hard for seniors.
The Honourable Member for Bellay-Chambly. Madam Speaker, the eligibility age has little importance when people have to wait for up to 2 years in some cases for OAS. We have to look at dignity for seniors, and the reality is that Service Canada doesn't have enough resources to manage OAS and GIS. I'd like to ask the Minister a question. Can the Liberals finally stop saying this and really help out seniors so that they can benefit from OAS with dignity and benefit from this, what they deserve?
Thank you very much. We are very focused on making sure that Service Canada responds more quickly and more appropriately to inquiries. In fact, we've improved response times, but there's still a lot of work to do, and the recent Auditor General's report has pointed us in a good direction. On the issue of OAS and CPP and automatic enrollment in GIS, we've taken steps to make sure that seniors are automatically enrolled through the tax system, to make sure that they get the benefits they're entitled to and retire with dignity. We've also invested heavily in reforms to CPP and changes to GIS to make sure they get more money as they enroll automatically. We're committed to making sure seniors are taken care of properly. Yes.
The Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil.
Canada-China relations are now at their worst level since Ottawa established diplomatic relations with Communist China in 1970. The Chinese president refuses to take the Prime Minister's calls, while the foreign minister's attempts to contact our Chinese counterpart has been met with silence. All this is happening while Canadians are unlawfully detained, and China continues to punish Canadian farmers and producers. Now the Prime Minister is saying he hopes to meet with the Chinese president in 3 weeks. He should have done that 6 months ago. Will the Prime Minister tell us how he expects to get a meeting with the Chinese president when he's put himself in such a weak position to do so?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let's make no mistake about this. Canada has made its positions very clearly well known to the people of China and the government of China. Our government takes every opportunity to advocate for Canadians, their interests, and especially detained Canadians. Just 2 weeks ago, a parliamentary delegation went to China. We raised the issue of Canadians detained. I was on that delegation. Unfortunately, the Conservatives and the NDP sent no one. We raised the issue of detained Canadians, of human rights. We raised the issue of canola and of pork. We will do our job. We'll protect Canadians and their interests.
The Honourable Member for Kitchener-Conestoga.
Exactly, Madam Speaker. Since these Liberals visited China, the situation has gotten even worse.
That's right.
Madam Speaker, farmers and processors in my riding are paying for this Liberal government's failures. China is continuing to unfairly target Canada and is now taking aim at our pork producers. Now the Prime Minister is saying he might talk to the Chinese president in 3 weeks. This crisis has been going on for 6 months, Madam Speaker. When will the Prime Minister finally stand up for our ranchers and farmers and support our Canadian agricultural industry?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food. Madam Speaker, I can assure you that our thoughts are with our canola and pork producers. Since the very beginning, we've attacked this issue on various fronts, and we've worked in cooperation with the industry, with farmers, and with our provincial counterparts as well. Obviously, as Minister of Agriculture, I defend the quality of our products. I defend our inspection system, which is reliable. The Minister of Trade and Diversification is certainly on a trade mission right now. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Prime Minister has grossly mismanaged our relationship with China. Now we've learned that meat producers are next in China's target list. Farm incomes were down 45% across the country in 2018, 68% in Alberta alone. Constituents in my riding of Bow River suffering the consequences. This crisis began 6 months ago. Now the Prime Minister is considering, maybe, meeting the President of China in 3 weeks. Gee, thanks. What's the Prime Minister waiting for to take some real action for my ag producers?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food. Madam Speaker, we are taking real action for our farmers, and this since the very beginning, in a constant manner. I met with my counterparts in China when I was in Japan, and for 2 days we did follow-up with the Canadian Food Inspection Agencies. We also looked at the canola issue with Chinese scientists. We also increased our support to farmers through an early payment program. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Well, Madam Speaker, those actions have had zero results. It's been 6 months since our relations with China have soured. 6 months since Canada hasn't had an ambassador to China. 6 months that 2 Canadians have been detained, and now the Chinese government is doubling down on canolas, peas, soybeans, and meat from Canada. We've repeatedly called for the Prime Minister to take action, and yesterday he said he might arrange a meeting in 3 weeks. Really? 3 weeks? Why won't the Prime Minister take action now to protect Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The cases of Michael Kovrig, Michael Spavor are a priority for this government. And this Parliament has had a proud tradition of uniting and working together when our farmers, when Canadians are detained, when we are at risk with any other country. And I would implore the opposition to think about what they're doing. We've rallied an unprecedented number of partners around the world in support of Canada's position. Liberal members were in China, Conservatives and NDP didn't come. We invite you to stand together and take the side of Canadians in this very important issue.
The honourable member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Madam Speaker, our relations with China have soured over the past 6 months. For 6 months, Canada has no ambassador to China. For 6 months, 2 Canadians have been detained, and now China is imposing sanctions on Canada. We've asked the Prime Minister to take action several times. He announced that he might arrange a meeting in 3 weeks, but if he'll see whether this will be appropriate or desirable. Wow. If the Prime Minister is afraid to do his job, could he ask someone else to do it for him? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Madam Speaker, the cases of Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor are a priority for our government, and I hope it is for others as well. We spoke with an unprecedented number of partners to discuss Canada's position. I went to China 2 months ago to discuss these cases, but the Conservatives and the NDP refused to send anyone. We are always ready to talk with China and to raise these issues. Thank you.
For Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
And yet there's no progress. This Prime Minister continues to destroy Canada's relationship with China as tensions continue to escalate. Canadian farmers are struggling as China has stopped imports of canola and is restricting soy and pork shipments, while 2 Canadians are suffering in a Chinese prison and another one faces the death penalty. And now the Prime Minister is only considering engaging directly with China in 3 weeks. And that's if the Chinese agree to it. Why is this Prime Minister showing such weakness in the face of China?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Our Prime Minister and our Minister of Foreign Affairs have taken these cases and all of these issues extremely seriously, and we continue to work in a very complex and difficult situation with integrity, with persistence, and with grace. I've raised the concerns that the member has raised myself in China 2 weeks ago, and we have rallied an unprecedented number of partners around the world in support of Canada's position. Last week, the United States and Canada issued a joint statement firmly rejecting wrongful detentions and calling for the immediate release of Michael Kovrig, Michael Spavor. We continue to raise these cases and all these issues.
The honourable member for Rosemont-La Petite Patrie. Madam Speaker, more and more people are taking their bikes to work or simply to get around town. Yesterday, Rosemont La Petite Patrie announced an ambitious plan to improve our bike path network by making intersections safer and creating new protected bike lanes. While city councillors are taking action, here the Liberals are dragging their heels. For months, the report on bike safety has been collecting dust on the Transport Minister's desk, and they're just telling us that there will be pilot projects. When will the Liberals take action to protect pedestrians and cyclists? The Honourable Minister of Transport. The government, Liberal government, has taken action. It did so a year ago. I reunited the provinces and territories to discuss this very serious issue with respect to pedestrians and cyclists who are vulnerable. And I told them on several occasions that we take federal initiatives and pilot projects to increase the visibility of these people with respect to truckers and large vehicles in cities. I congratulate him for his initiatives. We'd like other municipalities and provinces to do the same thing.
South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Madam Speaker, Amanda from Penticton has found that the money she gets from the Canada Child Benefit is useless, as there are no childcare spaces for her daughter, so she can't go back to work. Amanda began the Waitlisted project online to document the difficulties parents face when looking for childcare. They found that the child benefit is entirely inadequate for covering childcare costs and doesn't open up any new spaces. This isn't acceptable. Will the Liberals act immediately to create more childcare spaces so that parents like Amanda can go back to work?
The RO Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development.
A focus on alleviating child poverty is one of the most important priorities this government has addressed in its first 4 years, and it's done it in several different ways. Of course, the Canada Child Benefit, which was massively increased and made tax-free, which the NDP voted against, is part of the solution. But the other part of the solution is the $7.5 billion we've invested through the provinces to create new daycare spaces, to create new daycare subsidies, and to support as well through the infrastructure program the construction of new daycare facilities. This government is committed to finding a solution to the problem, working with partners to get there, including Indigenous partners with the first ever distinction-based program.
The Honourable Member for Durham.
Madam Speaker, the Veterans Hospital in Saint-Anne-de-Bellevue in Quebec was transferred from the federal government to the Quebec government in 2016. Unfortunately, under this Liberal government, care worsened, and this forced very elderly veterans to go to court to fight and obtain the services they were promised in St. Anne. Why are the Liberals letting down our veterans once again? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to congratulate my colleague for his excellent French. And yes, veterans and long-term care facilities across Canada, we always support them and keep veterans near their loved ones. And there are more than 5,000 veterans that receive care in the thousands of provincial institutions that we partner with. And it would be inappropriate for me to comment on this particular case. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, what's inappropriate is for the Liberal government to ignore our veterans. A day after we celebrated their win over tyranny in World War II, veterans like Wolf Solkin, who's the lead veteran at the St. Anne de Bellevue Hospital, he and his friends were the veterans that secured the democracy we have today. He's standing up for his fellow veterans at St. Anne's to ensure that they have the same level and quality of service and treatment that they had before the transfer in 2016. We can celebrate our veterans, Madam Speaker. Both sides respect that, but only this side can make it right. When will they commit to fixing the situation at St. Anne?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Defence. Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I said, this case is before the courts and it would be inappropriate for me to comment on it. Madam Speaker, what really hurts me is when I hear the Conservative members say that we aren't taking care of our veterans. And there are millions of dollars that has gone to defense and Veterans Affairs. Well, they laid off people, but we invested more than $10 billion in veterans. And we always stand up for them, support them, and offer them appropriate care when they need it.
Caribou Prince George.
Madam Speaker, it's obvious that this government doesn't care about the over 200,000 Canadians that are employed by forestry, or the 9,500 forestry jobs in Indigenous communities across our country, or the hundreds of communities across rural Canada that depend on forestry industry for at least half their base income. Despite having a once-in-a-generation chance to end the long-standing softwood dispute by negotiating into a new NAFTA, they squandered the opportunity. Why?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Science and Sports and the Minister of Public Services.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. We are taking action to ensure our forestry sector remains a source of good, middle-class jobs across the country. With new investments in Budget 2019, our support will total over $1 billion. Our Softwood Lumber Action Plan is actively supporting workers and communities. And this past fall, we announced funding through the Strategic Innovation Fund specifically for forestry. Building on our work to date, Budget 2019 includes additional investments to help this sector innovate, diversify, and grow. We will always stand with workers in our forestry sector. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Honourable Member for Cariboo Prince George.
Madam Speaker, thousands and thousands of jobs are at risk right now. Hundreds of jobs have been lost in the recent weeks in my province alone. Where are they standing with them? In the unemployment line? That answer is shameful. The Liberals have admitted that forestry hasn't been a priority. They would rather litigate than negotiate. For the past 4 years, they have failed to be a champion for our forestry families. What are they willing to do for the thousands of Canadians employed in our forestry industry who have already received mill closure layoff notices or their job losses?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Science, Sports, Public Services and Procurement.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And our hearts go out to the workers, families and communities. But we have to underscore that the job figures are doing very well. We've increased the number of jobs by 27,000 in the last month alone, and we have the lowest unemployment rate in 40 years. We continue to strengthen this industry's competitiveness and sustainability as it struggles with log supply and market conditions. From wildfires and invasive species, our forests are feeling the effects of climate change, and with new investments in Budget 2019, our support for forestry sector workers will total over $1 billion.
The Honourable Member for Hamilton Mountain.
Madam Speaker, in 2015, the Liberals promised the people of Hamilton change to make their lives better. But everyday families are just trying to keep up with their bills, grappling with sky-high housing costs, out-of-pocket health costs, child care and senior care. When big corporations decide to leave our communities, people pay the price of losing their jobs and their livelihood. Instead of standing up for workers, this Liberal government has been granting amnesty to wealthy KPMG clients trying to avoid paying their fair share of taxes. Can the Liberals explain to the people of Hamilton how this is fair?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Revenue.
Speaker, let me say that unlike the previous government, fighting tax evasion, bringing fairness to the tax system is a huge priority for this government. Since we took office, the CRA has completed twice as many offshore non-compliance audits in 3 years than it did in 10 years under the Conservatives. The CRA has opened 50 criminal investigations relating to tax evasion. With our historic investments of over $1 billion, our government is giving the agency the resources it needs to do its work, and we are starting to see results. We are committed to ensuring tax fairness, and we are delivering results.
The Honourable Member for Windsor-Tecumseh.
Mr. Speaker, in 2015, Liberals promised all working people change to make their lives better. But workers and retirees in Windsor and Tecumseh and in the rest of Essex County, they can still lose their pensions because their deferred earnings because Liberals broke their promise. They didn't fix the bankruptcy laws that put their wealthy insider friends ahead of hardworking Canadians. And New Democrats know people rely on their pensions to retire with dignity and to take care of their loved ones. So are the Liberals going to explain now what they're doing to protect pensions?
The Honourable Secretary Parlementaire du Ministre.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Finance Minister.
Canadians deserve peace of mind when it comes to their retirement security. We're taking a whole-of-government approach, evidence-based approach, to address retirement security for all Canadians. Our government held national consultations and heard pensioners, workers, lenders, and companies. And in Budget 2019, we took important steps to make insolvency proceedings fairer and more transparent, like ensuring better oversight over corporate behavior. Unlike the opposition, we know that it's possible to protect Canadians' retirement security without compromising businesses' ability to invest and grow and create good jobs.
The honourable member for Toronto Danforth.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My colleagues in this place have heard me speak before about the importance of proper nutrition, and I'm sure that we all share in the belief that kids need access to healthy food and good nutrition habits in order to thrive and be productive. Kids in Canada and all around the world deserve access to healthy food. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Development please update us on what Canada is doing to make sure that kids around the world have proper nourishment?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, by working together and promoting a comprehensive approach to nutrition and promoting the empowerment of women and girls takes us one step closer to gender equality. One example is Nutrition International, an important partner which helps nearly 500 million children annually and one of our key sponsors for Women Deliver in Vancouver. Their slogan, "She'll grow into it," speaks to the fact that women can and will make a difference if we reduce gender disparities and unleash the amazing potential of women and girls everywhere, Madam Speaker, and we'll make that a reality here in Canada and around the world. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Calgary Rocky Ridge.
Well, Madam Speaker, the Auditor General has many new responsibilities now, including auditing the government's ill-considered infrastructure bank and the new Trans Mountain Crown Corp that resulted from them chasing Kinder Morgan out of Canada. Last summer, the Auditor General said that they needed more money to be able to keep doing performance audits. And last month, they told the Public Accounts Committee that they canceled audits, including on cybersecurity, because they didn't have enough money. What is this government trying to hide from the Auditor General?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Treasury Board.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Although it's my pleasure to answer this question, I must admit it's with a bit of trepidation that I see that the Conservative Party, the Harper Conservatives, have really developed an interest in the Auditor General, because the last time that they had interest in the Auditor General, they slashed their budgets by $6.4 million. They fired auditors. They forced a parliamentary budget officer to take them to court, and they were found in contempt of Parliament itself. Madam Speaker, I'm just hoping that that's as far as their interest is going to go.
The honourable member for Calgary Rocky Ridge.
Well, Madam Speaker, one thing that never, ever happened under the previous government was the Auditor General coming to the Public Accounts Committee and saying, we don't have enough money to do our job. That never happened. On May 14th, the Office of the Auditor General told Public Accounts, quote, had we received the $10.8 million, we would have been able to do the work that was expected, unquote. So I asked, you are not adequately funded? They replied, that's right. What part of that testimony does the Parliamentary Secretary not understand, and why won't they?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister, the Treasury Board. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Hey, Madam Speaker, the reason why probably the Auditor General feels that he could fearlessly and freely offer advice to this government is because we actually listen to them. But let's take a look at this Conservative cavalcade of cowing, criticizing, and canning public servants who dared speak up to them. All I have to mention is Kevin Page, perhaps Richard Colvin, perhaps Linda Keane, perhaps Pat Storgren. Madam Speaker, I can tell you, I'm so glad that public officials feel that they could speak to us.
The honourable member for Oshawa.
You need $10 million and you said no.
Madam Speaker, the Port of Oshawa is one of my riding's crown jewels, and the Transport Minister announced the amalgamation of the Port Authorities of Oshawa and Hamilton this week, and it will take effect on the 18th, just 11 days from now. This decision was made without any meaningful consultations with the Oshawa Port Authority, the regional and city governments, port users, customers, tenant operators, labor groups, or the public. While this government once promised transparency, it has not been as advertised. Madam Speaker, when will the minister table the business case for the port amalgamation in this House? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, I'm disappointed to hear my colleagues say this because I can tell you personally that I spoke to the mayor of Oshawa on several occasions. In fact, with his council around the table. I also spoke several times to the mayor of Hamilton. We spoke to the port authorities themselves. There was a huge amount of consultation. We even extended the consultation period above what it had been planned before. This will be good for Southern Ontario, and we did all the necessary consultation.
The Honourable Member for Yorkton Melville.
Speaker, with the Prime Minister's counter tariff, steel and aluminum manufacturers in my riding of Yorkton Melville were crippled. Small and medium entrepreneurs invested everything that they could to keep their workers working. This Liberal government promised to have their backs, but never came through. It's clear assistance from the $2 billion tariff windfall was never intended for them. When will this Prime Minister admit his help for the steel industry is not as advertised?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and we'll always stand up for Canadian workers and Canadians' interests. And to support the steel and aluminum industries and workers, we've provided up to $1.7 billion through the BDC and EDC to keep businesses operational, $250 million in new funding through the Strategic Innovation Fund, the SIF, to bolster the competitiveness of Canadian manufacturers, $100 million in support for SMEs through the regional development agencies. And as you know, Madam Speaker, we stood to defend the workers in the industry against the unacceptable tariffs imposed by the Americans. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Kootenay, Columbia.
Madam Speaker, in my riding of Kootenay, Columbia, there are 4 national parks, and I have the pleasure of having many Parks Canada employees as constituents. Many staff work non-standard hours, and they struggle with finding affordable and accessible childcare. Parks Canada's collective agreement expired last August, and as part of the bargaining process, the union is asking for the creation of a joint committee on childcare to research the needs of employees, determine challenges, and recommend solutions. Will this government show leadership and work with Parks Canada employees to address the childcare crisis?
Bravo. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Madam Speaker, as representing the Minister of the Environment, it's important that we recognize that we have an obligation to the employees who work for the different departments and agencies, including Parks Canada. Of course, I'd be willing to sit down with the member after question period today to discuss the issue in greater detail so we can move forward in a manner that respects the needs of Parks Canada employees. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Courtenay Alberti.
Madam Speaker, in 2012, the Conservatives recklessly cut the Surf Guard program at Long Beach and Pacific Rim National Park Reserve, putting lives at risk. Prior to its cancellation, this life-saving program was in place for almost 40 years and responsible for saving dozens, if not hundreds, of lives. Recently, a CFB Comox helicopter and a Canadian Coast Guard vessel had to make yet another life-saving rescue. Following this incident and 2 fatalities last year at this same spot, the communities and the families want to know, how many fatalities and rescues will it take before this government does the right thing and reinstate this life-saving program?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Fisheries, Oceans and the Canadian Coast Guard.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This government has made the largest investment in fleet renewal for the Canadian Coast Guard in its history. We're putting forward a plan that will provide the Coast Guard with the right equipment while promoting economic growth and creating good-paying jobs across the country. The fleet renewal is needed as the average age of a large ship in the Canadian Coast Guard is 38 years old. They're nearing the end of their service lives. This government is reinvesting in the Coast Guard to protect the communities that are affected and the people that make their living on the water. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Madam Speaker, we have seen how these Liberals are using $600 million and Unifor to stack the deck in their favour in an election year. Shame. Now the Liberals are forcing Elections Canada to hire social media influencers to get out the vote. Now I thought we were fighting to get influence out of elections.
That's right.
Can the Liberals guarantee that these influencers will be nonpartisan, or is this just another example of Liberals trying to stack the deck and rig the next election?
Good question. Good question.
The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Speaker, there's only one party in this House that wants to suppress Canadian voters, Madam Speaker, and that's the Conservative Party of Canada. In fact, the record shows it, Madam Speaker, when they have misdirected voters as to where to vote, where they have tried to circumvent party fundraising rules, where they actually had a member of Parliament go to jail for not following elections law, Madam Speaker, and they were also tapped on the wrist for having government advertising and partisanship in the same frame, Madam Speaker. There's only one party, Madam Speaker, that has worked consistently to try and undermine the election, and that's the Conservative Party of Canada.
The honourable member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Madame la Présidente.
Madam Speaker, we've learned that Elections Canada will be spending $650 million to hire influencers on social media. Elections Canada should focus on holding free and fair elections and shouldn't be forced by the Liberal government to carry out yet another bid to rig the election. When is the Prime Minister going to stop manipulating every last aspect of our democratic institutions to stack the deck in his favour? The Honourable Minister for Democratic Reform. Madam Speaker, this is a dangerous game the Conservatives are playing, always trying to undermine our elections.
Speaker, I have a challenge for the members opposite. I have a challenge that let's see if they can make 2019 the first time they don't break elections law. Thank you.
The honourable member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Speaking of your habits.
Order on both sides of the House. Order. Order. Order on both sides of the House, please. The honourable member for Edmonton Manning will come to order. The honourable member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Madame la Présidente, le seul
Madam Speaker, all the Conservatives are Liberals want to do is rig the election.
Celebrities, athletes, and YouTube producers. But it is unfair and impossible for the Prime Minister to demand these people set aside their own opinions and experience and remain unbiased. Why doesn't the Prime Minister just admit that he is using his power and influence in this latest stunt to stack the deck and rig the next election?
The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Never put it past Conservatives to let facts get in the way of their questions. When we look at the record, Madam Speaker, there is one party who has consistently broken elections law, who has actually been convicted for it, and who's even had a member of Parliament go to jail for it. And in fact, when they had their chance in government, they put forward elections legislation that would make it more difficult for Canadians to vote, that would limit the rights of Canadians living abroad, and that would not even allow the Chief Electoral Officer to talk to Canadians about, get this, how to vote, Madam Speaker. On this side of the House, Madam Speaker, we will not take any lessons, and we will always stick to the facts. Thank you.
The member for Davenport.
Madam Speaker, it should come as no surprise that the Leader of the Opposition has discredited economic views to match his discredited social views. Recently, he stated that the government has no role in helping lift people out of poverty. While this explains the terrible Conservative track record on poverty reduction, it ignores that this Liberal government has helped lift more than 820,000 Canadians out of poverty and achieved the lowest level of poverty in Canada's history. Could the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Families remind the House of how our government is helping Canadians work hard to join the middle class?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development.
You know, a year ago, Ontario voters chose to elect a Conservative government. While the Conservative leader says that he doesn't think governments have a role to play in lifting people out of poverty, Conservatives in Ontario under Doug Ford seem to think they do have a role to push people into poverty. In fact, take a look at some of the cuts they've made. They've cut minimum wage for young people. They've cut social assistance for people with disabilities. They've cut mental health supports and cut back on funding for homeless shelters. They've even cut supports for advanced age seniors as they need support as they age. In fact, the Conservatives in this House just this week stood and said, if you want to know what God thinks about money, look at who God gives it to. If you want to know what Conservatives think about poverty, look at the...
It is getting a bit noisy in here, so I would just ask, I would ask all members to ensure that they can hear the question and allow people to answer it. The honourable member for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes Brock.
Madam Speaker, the Eastern Ontario Regional Network has a plan to help people get the broadband and cellular service connections they need. Nearly 20% of Eastern Ontario has no cell service, putting Ontarians' lives at risk. The project is expected to generate up to 3,000 jobs over 10 years and potential revenues of $420 million. Municipalities, private sector partners, and the province have all committed. When will this Prime Minister start taking connectivity seriously and commit to funding this essential project?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Rural Economic Development.
Progress in delivering infrastructure across the country and has approved 4,800 projects to date. We patiently wait for the Ford government to act on this and prioritize these projects, which they have failed to do in a timely manner and a collaborative way, even after we've extended the deadlines. We welcome this longer overdue interest on infrastructure by the government, and we are discussing the proposals with them and evaluating them properly. Instead of playing political games on this much-needed projects, we must work together to ensure that the needs of people are met and that we put shovels in the ground.
Ford sitting on 11.
The Honourable Member for Pontiac.
The government understands that no relationship is more important than the one we have developed with Indigenous peoples, and unlike the previous government, we're committed to investing in reconciliation. Removing barriers and working with Indigenous communities to promote access to sport is a matter our government takes very seriously. So can the Minister of Science and Sport please tell this House about the important investment our government is making to help promote Indigenous access to sport?
The Honourable Minister of Science and Sports.
I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for an excellent question. Sport builds self-esteem and leadership skills and has the power to transform lives. We listen to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Indigenous communities, and Indigenous sport leaders because we know no relationship is more important. Last week, I announced $48 million for a new program for sport and physical activity in Indigenous communities to help improve the lives of Indigenous peoples and build stronger, healthier communities for all. Everyone deserves the opportunity to participate in sport.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Madam Speaker, we've heard the same answer from these Liberals about the Eastern Ontario Regional Network project, and it's in action after 4 weeks of non-answers, and the province has already committed $71 million to fund it. This project will save lives by connecting first responders on a dedicated network. Municipalities in the province have put people's safety first and committed their share. The Ontario government has stepped up. The municipalities have stepped up. When will this Liberal government and this Prime Minister finally put Eastern Ontarians' safety first and fund this project?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for the Minister of Infrastructure and Communities.
Always ironic to hear the Conservatives talk about infrastructure when on this side of the House, the facts speak for themselves. Under this government, we've approved 4,800 projects, Madam Speaker. That's 4 times more than the last Conservative government. And the vast majority of those projects were approved in the first 3 years. 651 projects in Ontario when it comes to transit, 1,353 when it comes to green, 39 projects when it comes to community and cultural recreational infrastructure, and 82 projects in that member's riding. How many under Premier Ford? 0.
The Honourable Member for Manicouagan. Madam Speaker, over 40 years ago, the government created a tax credit to stimulate investment in the Atlantic region. It covers the Maritimes, the Gaspé, and Lower St. Lawrence, all the way to La Pocatière, but not the North Shore, which needs to diversify its economy too. Mining is great, but it's cyclical. I wrote to the Finance Minister, but he's done nothing, neither in the budget nor in the BIA. Why is this government so intent on discouraging investment on the North Shore? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Finance Minister. Our government takes investment very seriously all across the country and in all regions of Quebec, and that's why in the last budget we increased our funding for the regional economic development agencies in order to have a significant impact from coast to coast. And an important investment is being made today to ensure that investment occurs all across the country, all across Quebec, in all regions, including the North Shore. The honourable member for Manicouagan. Madam Speaker, let's talk about another issue where the government's neglecting Quebec's regions, the spruce budworm that is ravaging our forests. The infested area is bigger than all of New Brunswick, but the government has freed up $75 million for New Brunswick, but not a single penny for Quebec. Surprise, surprise, the Irvings own some of the forest in New Brunswick and have cutting rights over the rest. The money always goes into their pockets. Does the government realize that they're robbing Quebec to pay the Irvings? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
And Public Services and Procurement.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And our priority is making sure the forestry industry remains a source of well-paying jobs and prosperity. We understand the importance of evidence and science-based decision-making. That is why we are investing in early intervention and providing up to $74 million over 5 years to prevent the spread of spruce budworm in Atlantic Canada. We are also researching an early intervention strategy to slow the spread of these pests and minimize damage. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Repentigny. The cutting of 68 jobs at TVA is proof that the media are in trouble, even the most popular ones. Meanwhile, Facebook, Netflix and company aren't paying their fair share of taxes. They don't charge tax. They don't produce any Quebec content. They don't have a single journalist on their payroll. We need a new domestic television fund financed by the internet giants. Will the government finally force them to pay their fair share?
The Minister of Canadian Heritage and Multiculturalism.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Our thoughts go out to the workers who have lost their jobs and their families. Our media are in crisis, and the laws we have to protect our culture were made well before the internet. Europe has been working to update its laws for over 10 years. Canada only started when we were elected in 2015. While the Europeans are in a marathon to make the web giants contribute to the culture, we, because of conservative inaction, have to sprint. We will make the web giants contribute to our culture like every other Canadian business. There will be no free ride, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Nanaimo, Lady Smith.
Madam Speaker, the provinces and territories that represent 85% of the Canadian population have reduced their greenhouse gases by 15% since 2005, almost enough to meet the 2020 targets that Canada agreed to in Copenhagen. But we will not meet that target because two provinces, Alberta and Saskatchewan, have increased emissions by the same amount and now account for 50% of Canada's emissions. Madam Speaker, what is the government prepared to do to curb the emissions of Canada's oil and gas industry so we can meet our international obligations?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to take this opportunity, given the first time I've answered this member's question, to congratulate him on his recent by-election win and welcome him to this House. He's pointed to the fact that there's evidence that our plan is working across different provinces and across different sectors, but there is some work to do, and we've been working with the oil and gas sector in Canada to help that sector reduce its emissions in a number of ways. A few examples includes the phase-out of fossil fuel subsidies. I know we've already moved to phase out 8 ineffective tax-based fossil fuel subsidies, and we've introduced new regulations that are going to cut methane emissions by 45% in the short term. In addition, we're investing in research and development to help the sector reduce its emissions as we grow the economy.
And that brings us to the end of question period. Tabling of documents. Introductions of government bills. Déclaration de ministre.
Statements by ministers. Reports from interparliamentary delegations. Presenting reports from committees.
The Honourable Member for Ottawa West Nepean.
Speaker, I have the honour to present in both official languages the 27th report of the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development, entitled The Canary in the Coal Mine, Responding to Violations of Press Freedoms in Venezuela and Myanmar. Pursuant to Standing Order 109, the committee requests that the government table a comprehensive response to this report. I'd like to thank the witnesses, especially the journalists who testified before the Subcommittee on International Human Rights, some of them putting themselves at great personal risk to do so, and also journalists around the world who put themselves at risk for their safety to bring us the truth. Thank you.
I I do want to remind members that the House is still in session, and if they could please take their conversations outside and exit the chamber quietly. Presenting reports from committee, the honourable member for Miramichi Grand Lake.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have the honour of tabling both official languages. The 18th